Hi guys, Emma here. So it has been a week since my MDT appointment and I thought it might be useful if I let you know some of the questions that I asked them at MDT and what their answers were. So without further ado, I have quite a long list of questions to get through. But remember, these are specific to my local hospital, which is St Richard's in Chichester, and their bariatric centre, which is the Loxwood Centre. So the first question that I asked was, what is your current percentage of bypass versus sleeve? So they said they didn't know the exact percentages of this, but that they currently do more gastric bypass than they do sleeve surgery. But the nurse said that the margin between the two is closing. So currently they do more bypasses, but the margin is closing between the two. I then asked, why do you recommend sleeve to some people and bypass to others? And so really it boils down to certain health conditions. So for example, someone who has diabetes, they would automatically recommend the bypass. I believe the same for severe reflux as well. And there are, again, then certain health conditions that would mean that they would recommend the sleeve. So I think if you are notoriously deficient in certain vitamins, then they would possibly be more likely to recommend the sleeve. Okay, so the next question that I asked them was, what is your revision rate from sleeve to bypass? So this was the stage of the questions where I was still undecided about whether I wanted to go for sleeve or bypass. So revision is when you have had sleeve surgery and it hasn't worked for whatever reason. Perhaps you've developed severe reflux, and at a later stage they can make your sleeve surgery into a gastric bypass. It doesn't work the other way around. Once you've had gastric bypass, you can't then have sleeve surgery. So their answer was that their revision rate is very low. They are getting better at making the right decision the first time. So they take into account health conditions, they take into account what your diet was like before surgery. Are you someone who likes sweet things? Do you graze throughout the day, etc.? And they make the right decision the first time. They did say that they are doing much more revision from gastric band to gastric bypass. So that is where someone, say 10 years ago, had a gastric band fitted. They have had problems with it, perhaps it slipped during a pregnancy, and then it's not working anymore, so the bariatric team have taken out the gastric band and they might then go on to do gastric bypass. So they do much more revision from band to bypass than revision between the weight loss surgeries, sleeve to gastric bypass. The next question that I asked was, so this was a question for the dietitian, why do other bariatric centres have different post-op diets to the Loxwood Centre? So at Loxwood Centre, they put you on puree from day one. So you wake up from the operation, you get tea, coffee, water the evening that you wake up from your operation. The following morning, that day, you are going to be having purees. Other places, a lot of the blogs and vlogs and Facebook pages that I follow are based in America, and a lot of those people are on a liquid diet from surgery, potentially for the first 4 weeks or so. And there are other hospitals in the UK who also practice a liquid post-op diet. My local hospital does not do that. They have you on purees right from the get-go. So you come out of hospital already having started eating purees. The reason that they gave for doing that was that they believe there is no reason to only have liquids. Once the operation is done, your line of staples that is joining, whether you've had sleeve or whether you've had bypass, there should be no leaks. If there were leaks, there is a problem. So they check for leaks before they wake you up from surgery. Once they know there are no leaks, there is no reason for you not to be having pureed food. So they said that was the reason for that. All the joins are checked before you're woken up from surgery, and they want you to start as you mean to go on. So they want to make sure that you can tolerate puree before you leave the hospital. Okay, so my next question for the dietitian was, why doesn't the Loxwood Centre post-op diet include protein shakes? So again, this is something that I see in a lot of Facebook groups, in a lot of YouTube vlogs that I watch. Primarily they are American patients, and they drink protein shakes. They drink them as part of their liquid diet right out from surgery, but they carry on drinking them even when they start to reintroduce food. And it seems like they are having 3 or 4 protein shakes a day plus food. So I asked why that was, and the dietitian said, as I said before, they want you to start as you mean to go on. So they want you to get your protein from food, and they are giving you purees straight from the day after you've woken up from the anaesthetic while you're still in hospital. So they want you to get your relationship with food right straight from day one. They don't want you to be scared of eating, which I think is something that quite a lot of bariatric patients have said is a fear of theirs. And they want you to be concentrating on getting your protein from food. There's only so much protein that you can absorb from food in one go. Or not just from food, there's only so much protein you can absorb in one go, whether that's a protein shake, whether that's food, whether that's anything, I suppose. So if you are drinking protein shakes, there's only so much protein that your body can actually use from that protein shake. And I think the dietitian said it's about 20 grams of protein at a time. So, and I want to say that a figure 70 grams of protein a day is the amount that your body can actually absorb and make use of. So if you're constantly putting more than that in, it's just going to waste anyway. It's just going to go straight through you, as it were. So she also said that protein shake ingredients are not regulated. So you can read the back of the packet and see what ingredients it says are in it, but from one protein shake to the next, those ingredients have no regulatory body. So you could have one brand of protein shakes, and then that runs out, you buy a different brand, you are getting completely different things into your body. And I suppose even different batches of protein shakes, they might have decided to switch up their ingredients a bit, and none of it is regulated. So that is why they don't advocate protein shakes. Okay, so the next question that I asked, which again was a specific question for my local bariatric centre, was after their 2 years of aftercare, what happens if there is new information in the field of bariatric surgery in general, or particular thing that has become known about aftercare for gastric bypass or aftercare for gastric sleeve, depending on whichever one somebody has. And I asked them, do you have a way of contacting your past patients who are out of the normal 2-year aftercare period to let them know that there has been some update in the aftercare? And I asked this question to Lisa, the nurse, and she said that at the moment, no, they don't have a way of getting back in touch with past patients to give them updated information. But she said it was an excellent suggestion, and she was actually going to talk to someone about whether that is something they could start implementing. She said that quite often they have patients that come into them, new bariatric patients, who are coming in accompanied by a parent or a sibling or a friend who has had bariatric surgery in the past. And when they come in with the new patient, they learn something that has become new information by being there at the appointments with their friend or family member. And they wouldn't have known this new information if they didn't have a friend or family member who was going through the process at a later stage than them. So I said to Lisa, perhaps they could do something like an email newsletter or an information sheet that people can get. Hello, Teddy. And she said that that was a really good suggestion, and she was wondering whether they could do something like an updated information sheet that they put on the hospital's website so that past patients could go on it and click to view the most up-to-date information. And of course that would say on it when it was last updated, so you could see, yes, this information was last updated a month ago, for example. So I'm planning to follow up when I go back for my next appointment. I will follow up with them and I will ask them if they have started to think about implementing something like that, because I think that would be a really beneficial thing for past patients and patients that are going through the process at the moment. Okay, so the next question that I asked, these questions are now things about aftercare after the operation. So the first thing I asked was, what medication will I leave the hospital with? So you leave the hospital with 4 weeks worth of vitamins, and you also get 4 weeks worth of quite a strong antacid. While you're in the hospital, they will show you how to do heparin injections on yourself, and you will leave the hospital with 2 weeks worth of heparin injections. So that is a blood thinner. The purpose of that is to prevent blood clots, which are common after operations. And you also leave the hospital with soluble painkillers. I didn't write down how much supply of that you got, but you get some anyway. So the next question is, how will the operation affect the absorption of any medication that I may have to take in the future? Will I have to investigate what part of the digestive tract a particular medication is absorbed in to ensure that it will be effective for me? So I asked this question, I believe, to Lisa the nurse, and she said that it has minimal impact. So the only things that it might have an effect on are medications which are designed to be slow release. So slow release medications dissolve, I suppose, more slowly as they move through your system. So you're absorbing them up here and then further down and everything. Because they will move through your system much quicker after you've had bariatric surgery, you won't be getting the full dose from those medications. So in the future, you need to look at, if a doctor says to you that they're going to prescribe you something which is slow release, you need to make sure that they know that you won't be getting the full dose from that slow release medication. And if there is a standard or non-slow release version of that medication, that is the one that you should be on. Or you might, if there isn't and the only medication is slow dose, then you might need to have a slightly higher dose of it to make sure that you are getting the benefit from it. So I also asked, I know that weight loss patients can't have the NSAIDs after surgery, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So that is things like ibuprofen, naproxen, things like that. And so I asked, what alternatives can you take that would be anti-inflammatory? And the answer was you can have codeine-based medications, providing you're not allergic to codeine. So my next set of questions are about how soon I can resume being active after the operation. So you come out of hospital, providing everything goes smoothly, you are in hospital for 2 nights and then you come out on the 3rd day. So I asked, first of all, how long after surgery can I resume driving? So the answer is approximately 2 weeks, and it's when you feel you can do an emergency stop. And this will have implications with your car insurance and whether it would invalidate your car insurance if you are not fully recovered from surgery. My next one is, how soon can I go back to work? And in general, this is a how long is a piece of string question, because some people will go back to work much sooner than others. I know in America, the vlogs that I've watched and on the Facebook pages, some people are going back to work within a week of having their surgery, and to be honest, that blows my mind. I know that their work and healthcare and benefit system is not the same as ours in the UK, but it blows my mind that you would have quite a drastic operation and then be back at work within the week. So generally they are saying here that 2 weeks minimum off work. They sign you off for 2 weeks and you would then get your GP to sign you off for further increments if you felt you needed it. And in my particular situation, I lone work, so that would mean that I wouldn't have anybody with me if I became unwell at work. So my concerns were, would I feel faint or would I feel dehydrated? Because that's soon after surgery, you're still getting used to how much water you can get in at a time, how far out you're going to space your meals. You'd still be on purees at that stage. So I asked the nurse and she said, because I do lone working, they would say a minimum 3 to 4 weeks that I should be signed off work, and then obviously more than that if I felt I needed to be off more than that. So they, as I said, they would normally say minimum of 2 weeks for people with desk jobs. People with active jobs, they would recommend longer than that as well. So I also asked how quickly could I resume things like going to the gym, going to yoga, etc. So the nurse said it takes 2 weeks for the outer wounds to heal. It then takes 4 to 6 weeks for the inner joins to heal. So for my specific questions, I asked about yoga. She said it would be at least 2 weeks before I'd feel well enough to do that. And doing cardio and resistance work at the gym, she said that she would recommend waiting until I'd had my 6-week check at the hospital, and then they would give me the go-ahead to resume things like that. So my next questions were general questions about weight loss surgery. So I asked about the staples that they do the operation with. So I asked what they were made out of, would they set off metal detectors at an airport, and what happens if you need an MRI scan in the future. So the staples are made from titanium, which is a hypoallergenic metal that is used in many medical procedures, doesn't rust, and it shouldn't set off metal detectors at the airport. And I asked about the MRI scans as well, and I asked if that was a problem, what alternative scans would you be able to have, and would these be just as effective as an MRI scan? Lisa, the nurse, said that the titanium staples would not have an adverse effect in an MRI machine. They would not be ripped out of your body if you went into an MRI machine, so that will be fine. My next question was, what gallbladder problems do people have after weight loss surgery, and why is this? So you can develop gallstones if you lose a lot of weight quickly. When fat cells break down, this is, I believe, what causes gallstones. So that can be a problem, and if that becomes a problem in the future, you would then have your gallbladder removed. So I asked, why don't you remove the gallbladder at the time of doing weight loss surgery? So first and foremost, gallbladder is part of the digestive system. It does do a job, so they would only remove it if they had to. And also, now that weight loss surgery is done as keyhole surgery, it is not as straightforward as when it was an open procedure. And they don't want to risk nicking the gallbladder and getting bile and acid on the new stomach joins, because that would be an infection risk. Okay, my next question was, what part of the digestive tract produces hunger hormones like ghrelin? So it is the upper part of the stomach. So in sleeve surgery, that part of the stomach is removed completely, and in bypass surgery, that part of the stomach is disconnected and it won't ever have food passing past it, so it won't be activated, I suppose. Then I asked about the hormones which produce cravings for sweet food and what part of the digestive system those hormones are produced in. And Lisa said that those hormones are not produced in the digestive tract, they are produced in the brain. But weight loss surgery does affect those hormones, and you do, in a lot of cases, lose those cravings for sweet food, which for me would be wonderful. So for the reduction of ghrelin and also the hormones for craving sweet foods, I asked the question about, for the hunger hormone reduction to be effective, does the stomach need to be removed completely, i.e. sleeve surgery, or is it enough that it is just disconnected? So the nurse said that the hunger hormone decreases even if the stomach is still in place, i.e. bypass surgery. And bypass surgery, she said, is better for if you've got a sweet tooth because of dumping syndrome, which Teddy wants to know what dumping syndrome is. So dumping syndrome is if you eat sweet food, the part of the intestines which would normally process the sugars in sweet food is the very top part of the intestines. So if you've had gastric bypass, that part of the intestines is no longer processing the food, and that sweet food is hitting the intestines lower down in a part that isn't used to breaking down sugars, which then makes your intestines go into shock, and you will get like abdominal cramps, spasms in the intestine. A spasm is like when something like spasms like that. And when you have dumping syndrome, it makes you feel very poorly, probably makes you feel like hot and cold sweats. You might feel like you're going to be sick. You probably feel like you need to go to the toilet very urgently. And
when you feel like you're having morning sickness.
I don't think it's exactly like morning sickness, no, Teddy. So dumping syndrome is quite an effective deterrent from wanting to eat sweet things, because you know that if you eat something sweet, you are going to very quickly feel very, very poorly.
So, Mummy, no chocolate.
No, so that means no chocolate. So the next question I asked was, if you have bypass, does the stomach still drain stomach acid and digestive enzymes into your intestine, or does that bypass part of the stomach just kind of shrivel up and just stay in your torso but not really doing anything? She said no, it does not dry up. The enzymes and stomach acid do still drain into the intestine and do still do their job, but just lower down in the intestine. So the next questions were really questions for if I got a yes, which I did, so I then asked my questions. So, will I be put on the surgery waiting list today? So that was a yes. They did not need to do any further testing. I was worried that they might have said I needed to have a sleep test for sleep apnea, or something like that. Sleep apnea is if you don't sleep properly during the night and you're not getting enough oxygen into your body during the night. So that was fine, didn't need to be put forward for any further tests. If you did have to have further tests, they would get the results back of those, and you would be put on the waiting list from that date. So I was very glad that I didn't, because I could go on the waiting list from 6th of September. And then I asked, when will I find out who my surgery will be? And they said that when you get the phone call to tell you your op date, you will then be told whose surgical list you're on. And then they confirm that by letter a few days later. So the waiting list is 4 to 6 months. And I did also ask, because 4 to 6 months' time for me is going to fall sort of January to March kind of time, obviously the winter months. So I asked about whether the waiting list might potentially be longer in the winter months because of more people being ill in the winter, more pressure for them to free up beds for people. And the answer to that was it shouldn't affect it, because of bariatric patients having to do the liver reduction diet. The beds, they have a 6-bed ward in the Lockwood Centre, and those beds are ring fenced for bariatric patients, because bariatric patients have had to do the liver reduction diet. They are also the only beds that are potentially big enough and have the weight limit for those patients. So when other wards in the hospital are feeling pressure to send non-urgent people home so that they can move more urgent cases into those beds, that does not affect the beds in the Lockwood Centre. I also touched upon how likely is it during the winter months that a surgery might be cancelled, and they said the only time that would happen is if for some reason the surgeon could not get to the hospital. So for example, if there was major snow and the surgeon was snowed in and couldn't make it there. Now, where we are on the south coast of the UK, we very rarely get snow. If it snows, it does not settle on the ground. It melts within an hour or so of falling. So it would be very, very, very rare for us to have enough snow that it would mean that roads were blocked. The only other thing they said was if there was an absolutely major incident in A&E, and as I said, those 6 beds at the Loxford Centre are the very last ring fence beds that they would give up to non-bariatric patients. So it would have to be an absolutely major emergency that had come through A&E to mean that those beds were being used for another purpose. So I think that is all the questions that I asked during my MDT appointment. And if there's any questions that you want to ask, feel free to drop them in the comments below and I will answer them. They might be ones that I just sort of talked through with the various different healthcare professionals at my MDT appointment, but I may not have put them on my question sheet. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and if it has been helpful, give me a thumbs up. And I will endeavour to do more of these videos as I progress through other appointments. My next appointment would be my pre-op appointment. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.